So picture this. You're sitting on the couch watching the evening news, and there's a big segment on the pros and cons of free trade. For balance, the network brings on two highly credentialed economists. One is passionately arguing that free trade makes us rich. The other is insisting with equal passion that it's going to drive us straight into poverty. And your roommate just throws their hands up in frustration and goes, "These economists have no idea what's going on. They can't agree on a single thing. If the experts don't know, how is the average person ever going to know what's best?" It's a completely relatable frustration, right? I mean, how can we possibly understand the economy when the experts always seem to be clashing?
Well, welcome to this explainer because today we are going to unravel that exact mystery by learning how to truly think like an economist. To make sense of our incredibly complex world, economists actually wear two very distinct hats. Sometimes they're trying to objectively understand the world, and other times they're actively trying to change it. Once you understand this dual identity, not only does that confusing debate on the news start to make total sense, but you also gain an entirely new toolkit for making your own life decisions.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The economist as scientist. 2. Two basic economic models. 3. The policy advisor. 4. Why economists disagree. And 5. The graphing toolkit. Let's dive right in. Okay, section 1. The economist as scientist, wearing the lab coat. When economists put on their lab coats, their main goal is to objectively explain the causes of economic events by making simplifying assumptions. They basically follow the classic scientific method: devise theories, collect data, and analyze it. But here's the catch. Unlike a biologist or chemist, an economist can't usually conduct controlled experiments in a lab. They can't just pause the global economy to test out a brand new theory on inflation. Instead, they have to be incredibly observant data detectives, paying really close attention to the natural experiments offered up by history. Moving right along to section 2. Two basic economic models, simplifying reality. You know how a biology teacher uses a plastic model to show how a human heart works, leaving out all the messy details? Economists do the exact same thing, using visual diagrams to highlight only what truly matters. Our first model is the circular flow diagram. This is a schematic representation of the entire economy, simplified down into just two main actors: households and firms. Firms produce goods and services using inputs, things like labor, while households actually own those inputs and consume the goods. The absolute genius of this model is the dual flow. Dollars flow in one direction as households buy goods and firms pay wages, while the physical inputs and outputs flow in the exact opposite direction. It is literally the heartbeat of the economy visualized. Let's move to our second model and see how this builds. Check out this data that maps out what we call the Production Possibilities Frontier, or PPF for short. Imagine a simplified economy that only produces two things: airplanes and soybeans. This table shows us the maximum feasible combinations of these two goods that this economy can produce given its available resources and tech. At point A, they go all in on soybeans, producing 5,000 tons but zero airplanes. At point E, it's the exact opposite: 100 airplanes, zero soybeans. Now, when we graph that table out, we get a curve. Any point resting directly on that curve is considered efficient, meaning the economy is getting absolutely everything it can from its scarce resources. But let's look closer. Producing 80 airplanes and 4,000 tons of soybeans is a point outside the curve. That's totally impossible given our current resources. Meanwhile, producing 30 airplanes and 2,500 tons of soybeans is a point inside the curve. That is possible, sure, but it's highly inefficient because resources are sitting idle and being wasted. We could be producing way more. So, the crucial takeaway here is that in a truly efficient economy, the only way to get more of one thing is to trade off and produce less of another. If we want more airplanes, we have to pull workers and land away from the soybean farms. This trade-off is the very definition of opportunity cost, what you must give up to get some item. Visually, if you're looking at the graph, this cost is the exact slope of the production possibilities frontier. Before we change hats, let's clarify one last thing about the scientist side. The scientific study of economics is fundamentally split into two perfectly paired yet totally different fields. Microeconomics zooms all the way in on the fine details, studying how individual households and firms make decisions and interact in specific markets. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, zooms way out to the big picture, studying economy-wide phenomena like inflation, unemployment, and total economic growth. All right, Section 3, the policy advisor, wearing the suit. While scientists observe the world, policy advisors are actively trying to improve it. This dual identity is expressed through two completely different types of language.
Positive statements are descriptive claims about how the world is, and they can be confirmed or refuted by data. But normative statements, those are prescriptive claims about how the world ought to be, and they heavily involve human values, politics, and opinions.
This normative focus gives economists a massive footprint in our government. They aren't just tucked away in university libraries writing papers. They're acting as key policy advisors across all these major institutions. They advise the president through the Council of Economic Advisors. They manage the budget at the OMB. They shape policy at the Departments of Treasury, Labor, and Justice. They run the numbers at the Congressional Budget Office. And they guide monetary policy at the Federal Reserve. Their normative recommendations literally shape the rules we live by. Section 4. Why economists disagree. Theories versus values.
So let's go back to your roommate's complaint about those arguing experts on the evening news. Sometimes economists simply disagree on scientific theories, and that's normal. But very often, even when they completely agree on the underlying facts, they clash on television because of differing political philosophies. They agree on how the world is, but they fight fiercely over how it ought to be. But here is a fascinating truth. Public perception is often totally wrong about how which economists actually disagree. The reality is that experts overwhelmingly agree on many major issues. Take this quote regarding ticket scalping. Economists heavily agree that laws limiting ticket resale actually make audiences worse off on average. They also overwhelmingly agree on things like the benefits of free trade. The reason you don't hear about this consensus? Well, sometimes the political process and those other advisors in Washington simply stand as immovable obstacles to what the economists are completely united in recommending. Finally, Section 5, the Graphing Toolkit, Becoming a Data Detective.
If you want to think like an economist, you have to read data without falling into common visual traps. Consider the danger of omitted variables. Imagine seeing an upward-sloping graph proving that households with more cigarette lighters have higher cancer rates. A deceptive graph might convince you that plastic lighters literally cause cancer. But a good data detective asks, wait, was a critical variable omitted here? In this case, yes, for sure, the number of cigarettes smoked. The lighter isn't causing the cancer. The smoking is. The graph entirely ignored the real cause. Another major visual illusion to watch out for is reverse causality. Imagine an upward-sloping graph comparing the number of police in a city to the number of violent crimes. The graph shows a clear, positive relationship, making it look like a higher police presence actually causes more crime. But that's backwards. The reality is that dangerous, crime-plagued cities simply hire more cops to deal with a problem. Event B caused event A, not the other way around. And that brings us to the end of our journey today. You've seen the scientists' models, you've understood the policy advisors' values, and you know exactly how to spot deceptive data. So to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to ponder in your own life. Suppose you're trying to decide whether to buy a new car. How will you use this very toolkit, weighing your opportunity costs, separating objective facts from your personal values, and avoiding missing variables to make that choice? Think like an economist, and you might just make the best decision of your life. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.